I found out my parents lied about my sibling's death. The truth broke me. I was 6 when they told me my brother died. I remember it because everything changed that day. My mom's face, the way my dad moved around the house, the silence that settled like dust in every corner of our home. I didn't understand it at the time. All I knew was that one day I had an older brother and the next I didn't. His name was Liam. He was 8 years older than me. He used to let me sit on his shoulders when we went to the park. He drew comic strips in the margins of his homework and called me Squirt, even though I hated it. He used to sneak me candy when Mom said no and stayed up past his bedtime just to play board games with me on the floor of his bedroom. Then he was gone. They said it was an accident. Something about a fall, a head injury, a late-night trip to the hospital that didn't end the way it was supposed to. They didn't say much else, and honestly I didn't ask. I was 6. Grief came in bursts of confusion and tantrums and quiet sobbing that made my chest ache. They didn't have a funeral. No burial. No ashes. No ceremony. Just silence. Too painful, my mom said when I asked why we didn't say goodbye. We couldn't handle it. That's what I grew up believing, that some grief is too big to speak aloud, too heavy to carry in front of others. So I buried Liam the way they wanted me to. Quietly. Internally. Like a dream you're not supposed to talk about in daylight. We never spoke about him again. The photos disappeared. His room became a storage space. I was told not to go in there and I didn't. At least not for a long time. His name became something sacred and forbidden at the same time. And when I got older I told myself it made sense. That they were protecting themselves. Protecting me. That trauma shows up differently for different people. That maybe it was just easier to pretend he never existed than to face the hole he left behind. But something inside me never really accepted it. As I remembered Liam. Vividly. He wasn't just a blurry childhood memory. He was real. He was here. And I felt the absence of him in every birthday party where one chair sat empty. Every family photo with a little too much space on one side. I never stopped wondering. And the older I got, the more the silence around him started to feel suspicious. I never said anything out loud. I didn't want to hurt my parents. And I didn't want to admit that I didn't believe them. But I started noticing little things. Like how Mom would flinch when I asked too many questions about the past. Or how Dad would leave the room whenever Liam's name accidentally came up. Usually when some relative who hadn't been warned would ask, "And how's your boy Liam doing?" And the strangest thing? I never found a single newspaper article. No obituary. No hospital report. Nothing. As if his death hadn't even made it beyond the walls of our home. I pushed the thoughts down. I had school. Friends. Life to keep up with. I learned how to carry the questions like quiet companions. Always there but never loud enough to interfere. But they never left. And deep down I think I always knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know how wrong it really was. Not yet. There's something eerie about a house that never speaks of the dead. You start to hear them anyway. In the gaps of conversation, in the way someone hesitates before answering, in the too quick changes of subject. Our house was full of those echoes. The kind you only notice when you stop trying to fill the silence. By the time I hit high school I had mastered the art of pretending. I smiled, laughed, played sports, went to parties. I looked like someone who had grown up normal. But underneath there was always Liam. Not in a haunting way. More like a missing puzzle piece I couldn't stop searching for. His name never came up. Ever. My friends didn't know I had a brother. Most people assumed I was an only child and my parents never corrected them. Sometimes I wanted to scream just to hear someone say his name out loud. And then came the day I broke the rule. I asked my mom point blank, "What hospital did Liam die in?" It was a Sunday morning. We were sitting in the kitchen. She was cutting fruit and I was scrolling through my phone trying to work up the courage to speak. When I finally did she froze. Knife midair. Hand stiff. Face pale. "What?" she asked, too flat, too fast. "The hospital," I repeated. I realized I never asked which one it was. She blinked. Took a breath. Then smiled. But it wasn't real. It was the kind of smile you put on when you're trying to sell a lie you haven't practiced in years. "I don't remember," she said. "You don't remember the name of the hospital where your son died?" I asked. Her face darkened. "Don't be cruel." I wanted to backtrack. I really did. But something in me was pulsing. Old, angry, betrayed. "I'm not trying to be cruel," I whispered. "I just need to know." She stood up. Walked to the sink. Didn't look at me. He died, she said quietly. And nothing will change that. And that was the end of it. But not for me. That night I searched online again. Every local and regional archive. I filtered through years of articles, hospital records, public obituaries. Nothing. No record of an 8-year-old boy named Liam dying in the state during that year. It made no sense. And then I remembered something that had been sitting in the back of my mind like a forgotten bookmark. When I was about 10, I had gone looking for Christmas decorations in the garage. I found the boxes, sure. But I also found something else. A small wooden crate labeled L. Inside were old school notebooks, crayon drawings, a science project report. All with Liam's name on them. And right at the bottom, a photo of him in a soccer uniform standing beside a much younger me. I had completely forgotten about it until that night. I slipped out of my room, crept into the garage, and started searching like a woman possessed. The crate wasn't there. None of the boxes were. All the storage had been cleaned out, reorganized and condensed. I asked my dad about it the next day and he shrugged. Your mom did some spring cleaning. Got rid of old junk. Old junk. That's what he said. I couldn't breathe. I didn't push it. I just nodded and left the room. But my hands were shaking. It was like they were trying to erase him. But why? What were they hiding? They had always told me not to go into Liam's room. At first it was because it was too painful. Then when I got older it was simply off limits. I obeyed for most of my life, partly out of respect and partly because I was scared of what I might find, or not find. But after what happened in the garage, I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth I was looking for might be behind that door. So one afternoon when both my parents were out of the house, I took the key from the kitchen drawer where they kept all the spares. I walked down the hallway, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. That door had always felt more like a wall. Solid. Imposing. Sacred. But that day I opened it. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not dust. Not decay. Just stillness. Like time had been carefully folded and stored away. And everything was there. Liam's bed neatly made. A shelf with old action figures. A desk with pencil marks and doodles carved into the wood. A lamp that didn't turn on. Posters of vintage cartoons and planets on the walls. Nothing had changed. It was like a museum display. A shrine to a boy frozen in time. I walked around slowly, my fingers trailing along the edge of his desk, the corners of picture frames. There was one of us on his nightstand, me grinning with ice cream smeared on my face, him holding a cone and giving the camera a lazy smile. The room wasn't dusty or neglected. It had been cleaned, cared for, maintained, which made no sense. If it was too painful to talk about, too painful to even mention him, then why keep this room intact for over a decade? Why preserve it like this? I opened the closet next, half expecting it to be empty. It wasn't. Shirts still hung in a neat row. Shoes on a rack. A backpack on the floor. Inside it were old notebooks, a handheld game, a few loose coins, and a folded schedule. It was dated 2 months after they said Liam died. My hands went cold. I flipped through the notebook. Math problems. Doodles. His name scribbled in the margins. The last page had a note written in pen, not pencil like the rest. Going to be late. Don't wait up. Tell Mom I'll be back after the movie. No date. No details. Just that. And suddenly I remembered something else, vaguely like a whisper. The week after Liam supposedly died, I had heard a knock on the front door late at night. I was half asleep and got out of bed to look. I saw my mom standing in the foyer talking to someone. I couldn't see who. When I asked her the next morning who it was, she told me I had dreamed it. But now I wasn't so sure. I stood in that room for what felt like hours. Just standing. Just breathing. Just trying to understand how so many lies had lived in our house without ever being noticed. And that's when I saw it, taped to the bottom of his desk. A small, square envelope. Yellowing. No name on the front. I pulled it down carefully and opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Liam, a little older than I remembered him, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. They were outside, near what looked like a rundown building. Both of them were smiling. On the back of the photo was a scribbled note in Liam's handwriting. Safe. Don't worry. Tell her I'm okay. My breath hitched. Who was her? Who was the man? And more importantly, when was this taken? Because Liam looked alive. Older. Healthy. And very, very real. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed clutching the photo like it might evaporate if I let go. I kept flipping it over, staring at Liam's handwriting, trying to remember how his voice sounded. I kept hearing those words. Tell her I'm okay. Tell who? Me. Why would he need someone else to deliver that message? I stared at the man in the photo beside him. He looked middle-aged, weathered, maybe late 30s or early 40s. Not someone I recognized. His arm was around Liam's shoulder in that awkward, not quite family kind of way. Like they weren't close, but they were connected somehow. And the setting, it wasn't our neighborhood. It looked rural. There was a broken fence in the background and some type of barn or shed. Nothing familiar. That photo was proof. Liam didn't die. Or if he did, it wasn't when or how they said. The next day I skipped class and went to the library. I didn't trust my phone or home internet. Not with the way my parents had buried the truth. I didn't even bring the photo. I scanned it and stored it on a flash drive before locking it in my glove compartment. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly. But I started by searching public records. Missing persons reports. Police databases. Anything that mentioned Liam's name around the time he was supposed to have died. And then I found it. Not under Liam Monroe, which was his full name, but under L. Carter, my mom's maiden name. A report filed 2 years after his death. Juvenile found wandering highway near state border. Gave name as Liam Carter. No ID. No missing person record. Taken to youth shelter. That was it. Just a blip. But it matched. Same birth month. Same year. Same smile. The file said he was picked up near Pine Ridge County, about 4 hours from where we lived. So why wasn't this public? Why didn't anyone say anything? I wrote down everything I could find and printed it out. That night, I went home and stared at my parents across the dinner table like they were strangers. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table. But I didn't. Because I wasn't ready for their answers yet. Not without more proof. So I went back into Liam's room. And I tore it apart. Not in a destructive way but methodically. Every drawer. Every book. Every shoebox. I flipped the mattress, checked the vents, searched the closet floor. And then I found it. A metal lunchbox tucked inside an old shoebox. Inside were clippings. Notes. Receipts. One looked like a bus ticket to a town in Pine Ridge. Another was a folded-up map with 2 locations circled. The handwriting wasn't Liam's. It was Dad's. I stared at it for a long time. Why would my dad keep a bus ticket to a town we never visited? Why circle those places? And why hide it in a room that was supposedly locked up for good? I was shaking by the time I closed it. As now I was sure. They didn't just lie about Liam's death. They were part of whatever made him disappear. My childhood home always had this eerie stillness to it, like the air was waiting for something. Growing up, I blamed it on the grief, the weight of a house where a child had once lived and then didn't. But now I knew that silence wasn't grief. It was secrecy. And secrets have a smell, you know? Like dust and wood and something sweet turned sour. That's what the attic smelled like when I climbed up there the next morning. I hadn't been up in years. It was the one place my parents never locked, but somehow still managed to make off limits. Dangerous, they'd say. Nothing but old junk. But I didn't believe that anymore. I couldn't. I had barely made it up the last step before I saw it. A weathered cardboard box marked Smaz Lights. I don't know why, but something about that box felt off. It wasn't with the other Christmas stuff. It sat alone behind an old coat rack and a broken lamp. I pulled it toward me, brushing off cobwebs, heart racing like I was doing something illegal. Inside, beneath layers of tangled tinsel and broken bulbs, was a stack of envelopes bound with a rubber band. Yellowing. Faded. I didn't recognize the handwriting on the top one. It was addressed to Liam Carter. Do not return. I froze. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the box. I opened the envelope and pulled out a letter written in loopy, uneven penmanship. Liam, I don't know where you are now, but I hope you're safe. I still remember the night you showed up at our door, thin as a wire, scared out of your mind. I don't blame you for running. I would have run too if I were you. You're not a bad kid. You never were. What they did to you is wrong. I've reported it twice, but nothing ever sticks. I don't know how your parents pulled it off, but they've buried the whole thing. Don't come back. Not yet. They're still looking. But if you ever need a place to hide again, this door is always open. That letter didn't just rattle me. It shattered me. What they did to you was wrong. They're still looking. Don't come back. It wasn't just a lie. It wasn't just some twist in a sad family story. It was something darker. Something that scared even the people who tried to help him. I read every letter in the stack. Most of them weren't even opened. A few were dated months, even years after his death. And every single one was signed the same way. Off cobwebs, heart racing like I was doing something illegal. Inside, beneath layers of tangled tinsel and broken bulbs, was a stack of envelopes bound with a rubber band. Yellowing. Faded. I didn't recognize the handwriting on the top one. It was addressed to Liam Carter. Do not return. I froze. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the box. I opened the envelope and pulled out a letter written in loopy, uneven penmanship. Liam, I don't know where you are now, but I hope you're safe. I still remember the night you showed up at our door, thin as a wire, scared out of your mind. I don't blame you for running. I would have run too if I were you. You're not a bad kid. You never were. What they did to you was wrong. I've reported it twice, but nothing ever sticks. I don't know how your parents pulled it off, but they've buried the whole thing. Don't come back. Not yet. They're still looking. But if you ever need a place to hide again, this door is always open. That letter didn't just rattle me. It shattered me. What they did to you was wrong. They're still looking. Don't come back. It wasn't just a lie. It wasn't just some twist in a sad family story. It was something darker. Something that scared even the people who tried to help him. I read every letter in the stack. Most of them weren't even opened. A few were dated months, even years after his death. And every single one was signed the same way. I didn't recognize the name. No last name. No address. Just the same scrawled initial over and over. Who was M? How did they know Liam? What were my parents trying to hide? I took the letters, packed them carefully into a folder and left the house. I didn't leave a note. Didn't send a text. I just drove. I didn't know where yet. But I knew one thing. My brother didn't die. And whatever happened to him, it wasn't an accident. I didn't know where to begin, so I started with the photo. The one I found taped under Liam's desk. Him standing beside that unfamiliar man. The same man who I now believed might be the mysterious M. I'd scanned the image, brightened it, enhanced it as best I could. I examined the background. There was a rusted mailbox with faded numbers on it. Number 3247. Barely visible. I zoomed in until the pixels bled into one another. I didn't know the street. I didn't know the town. But something about the structure in the background reminded me of the rural areas outside Pine Ridge. Somewhere I'd driven through once years ago. I took a leap. I drove out to Pine Ridge. 3 hours of backroads, old country gas stations, and a playlist I barely heard. The letters and photos sat in a manila folder on the passenger seat like a heartbeat beside me. When I got into town, I started asking questions. Carefully. Have you ever seen this man? Does this place look familiar? I'm looking for someone named M. Most people just shook their heads. Some glanced at the photo politely, said sorry, and walked away. I was starting to feel foolish, like I had come all this way chasing ghosts. Then, at a small feed store on the edge of town, the woman behind the counter squinted at the photo. That's Mike. Used to run a youth shelter up near Red Hollow. My stomach dropped. Mike. Yeah. Mike Shepard. Real quiet guy. Good with kids. Shelter closed years ago after funding got cut. Do you know where he is now? She scratched her chin. Last I heard, he took over maintenance for the old Pine Hollow cabins. It's up off Route 8. Kind of remote. Might still be there. I drove there immediately. The road turned to gravel. Trees closed in. I passed abandoned cabins and the shell of what looked like a burned-out barn. And then I saw it. Cabin number 5. Porch light on. I parked, got out, and stood in front of the door for a long time before knocking. When the door opened, I felt like I was falling. It was him. Older, a bit grayer, but unmistakably the man from the photo. He stared at me for a moment like he was trying to place me. Then he said quietly, "You're her." Her. He stepped back. "You'd better come in." The cabin was simple. Clean. Smelled like wood smoke and old books. I sat down across from him at a scarred kitchen table, the photo in my hands. "I'm Haley," I said. "Liam's sister." He nodded slowly, like that confirmed something for him. Like he'd been waiting years for me to show up. "I figured you'd come one day," he said. Didn't think it'd take this long. I didn't know where to start. So I just asked, what happened to him? Mike looked away. He was scared, he said finally. Showed up here in the middle of the night, bruised and barefoot. Said he couldn't go home. Said he'd been running for 2 days. I couldn't breathe. I tried to report it, Mike continued. Took him to the sheriff. But your parents showed up before I could say anything. Claimed he was mentally unstable. Accused me of coercing him. The sheriff backed off. Why didn't you call child services? I asked. I did. Twice. They closed the case both times. Your parents had money. Lawyers. They made it go away. But why say he was dead? Mike's eyes darkened. They said it was for the family's sake. Said he'd been sent away for treatment. But Liam said something different. I leaned in. He said your dad was cruel, controlling. Not in the usual way. Quiet. Manipulative. There were things he wouldn't say. Things he couldn't say. But he told me he had to get out. That no one believed him. Not even your mom. My whole body went cold. I remembered little things. The way Liam flinched when Dad raised his voice. How quiet he got before dinner. How he sometimes disappeared for hours without explanation. I'd always thought he was just a moody kid. But now I wasn't so sure. Where is he now? I asked, voice shaking. Mike hesitated. He stayed here for 6 months, he said. Then he left. Said he had a chance to go to California with someone he trusted. I haven't heard from him in years. I closed my eyes. Why didn't you ever try to find me? I didn't want to drag you into it, Mike said. You were just a kid. And I didn't know if you even remembered him. But I wrote those letters. In case he came back. He didn't, I whispered. No. But you did. When I left it was nearly dark. Mike gave me an address. A name. Someone who might have seen Liam last. But that night as I sat alone in a cheap motel room staring at the ceiling, none of it felt real. My brother had been alive. They lied to me. All of them. And now I had to decide. Do I confront them? Or do I keep digging? I drove home the next day. The whole ride back, my fingers tightened around the steering wheel like they were trying to hold me together. I kept thinking of Liam, 10 years old, bruised and barefoot, running through the dark because he was more afraid of our parents than the outside world. I kept thinking about Mike, about the quiet anger in his voice. The way he said, your dad was not right. And then I thought of my mother. Her cold silences. Her too quick smiles. Her avoidance. I had questions. They had answers. And this time I wasn't going to back down. When I walked in the door, my mom was at the sink. My dad was in his recliner, TV on low. They both looked up like nothing was wrong. Like I hadn't just discovered they'd faked a funeral for their son. Where have you been? Mom asked. I dropped the folder on the table between us. Pine Ridge. Silence. I opened the folder slowly. Laid out the photo. The letters. The printout of the juvenile report. The map from the shoebox. My father didn't move. Didn't blink. My mom gripped the edge of the counter. Want to try again? I said quietly. She didn't speak. Neither did he. So I kept going. Liam didn't die. You made that up. You erased him. You lied to me for years. Still nothing. I found the man who took him in, I said, voice shaking. He told me everything. I found the letters. The photo. I found Liam's handwriting. Don't you dare tell me I imagined it. My mom sat down. Fully. Her hands were trembling. My father finally spoke. I did what I had to. His voice was calm. Measured. Like this was just another dinner conversation. What you had to. I snapped. You told a 6-year-old her brother died. You let me grow up thinking I'd lost him. That he was gone. You never gave me the chance to say goodbye. To know him. Why? He didn't look at me. He ran, he said. We couldn't control him anymore. He was acting out. Dangerous. Lying. Stealing. He had no respect. For us. For the house. For the rules. He was 10. I shouted. 10. My mom put her face in her hands. Her shoulders started to shake, but no sound came out. We sent him away to a place, my father continued. A facility. That's where he was supposed to be. But he escaped. Started telling lies. Mike, whoever he is, got involved. And after that it was too late. We couldn't bring him back. Not without destroying everything. So you told people he was dead? I said, stunned. We had no choice. You had every choice. He finally looked at me. And in that moment I saw it. No regret. Just bitterness. Pride. He was going to ruin this family, he said. So we did what we had to do to keep it together. And that was it. My mom cried silently. My dad turned back to the television. And I stood in a house I no longer recognized, across from people I no longer trusted. That night I packed a bag and left. I didn't tell them where I was going. I didn't even look back. Because what they had done, what they had chosen to do, wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. And now I had a new one. Find my brother. Or at least what's left of him. I stayed in a rented room above a bookstore in a sleepy town just past the Pine Ridge County line. It wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet, and that's all I needed. I didn't speak to my parents again. At first I kept waiting for a call. A message. An apology. Something. But nothing came. And that told me everything I needed to know. They were done lying but not ready to admit it. And I was done waiting. So I focused on the only thing that mattered now, finding Liam. I started with the address Mike gave me. It belonged to someone named Danny Reyes, a former youth counselor who'd worked in shelters across Northern California and Oregon. According to Mike, Liam had left with Danny when he was about 15, promising to start fresh. That was nearly a decade ago. I didn't have a number. No email. Just an address from 10 years back in Crescent Bay, California. So I drove. 12 hours on the road, one crumpled receipt from a vending machine lunch and 3 gas station coffees later, I pulled into Crescent Bay, a quiet seaside town that looked more like a postcard than a real place. The address led to a small blue house on a hill facing the ocean. I knocked. An older woman with silver streaks in her braids answered. Her eyes scanned me like she already knew what I was going to say. I'm looking for Danny Reyes, I said. Her smile faded. You're not the first. I blinked. What do you mean? She opened the door wider and gestured for me to come in. Her name was Rosa. She had lived in that house for over 30 years. Danny, her nephew, had stayed with her for a while before moving out west. She hadn't heard from him in years. Drifted, she said. That's what he did. Good heart. Too many scars. I told her about Liam. Showed her the photo. The letters. She read them slowly, like each word needed time to settle in her bones. I remember him, she said softly. Quiet. Polite. Used to draw pictures of wolves and trees. Always looked like he was half here, half somewhere else. Did he say anything about where he went after? She thought for a long time. Then nodded. He mentioned a place. A camp maybe? Some kind of nature program in Oregon. Run by vets and ex-counselors. Said he felt safe there. I think he called it, she paused. Solace. That was the word. Camp Solace. That was all I needed. I spent the next day online, digging through outdated websites and nonprofit directories until I found it. Camp Solace. No longer active, but archived in a local nature conservation database. It had closed 5 years ago, but there was a contact. Former program director, Nathan Crowley. A phone number. A glimmer of hope. I called. Voicemail. I tried again. And again. Finally, on the 4th try, someone answered. Crowley. Hi, my name is Haley. I'm looking for someone. I think he might have stayed at Camp Solace. His name is Liam Carter. Silence. Then a low sigh. Yeah, he said. I remember him. My heart nearly exploded. Do you know where he is? No, he said. But I remember him. He sounded tired. Pause. Can we meet? I asked. Please. Another pause. Then, I'm 2 hours north of Eugene. You come up here, I'll talk. I was already driving before the call ended. Something told me this was it. The last trail. The final piece. But I also felt something heavier. Something I hadn't admitted to myself until now. What if he doesn't want to be found? What if I've built my healing around a person who's long since let me go? What if the brother I loved doesn't love me back? I pushed the thought down and kept driving. Because even if I couldn't bring him home, I needed him to know I was looking. Nathan Crowley lived in a weather-beaten cabin nestled at the edge of a forest preserve. The kind of place where the trees are thicker than the roads and the wind has a voice of its own. He met me on the porch. mid-50s. Tall, wiry, with kind eyes and a heavy sadness in his posture. He didn't say much at first. Just nodded toward a chair and poured 2 mugs of coffee. We sat in silence for a long time. He stared out into the woods like the trees were old friends. I stared at the steam rising from my cup, trying to steady my breathing. Finally he spoke. "You look like him, you know." My throat caught. "You really remember him?" He nodded. "Liam came to us when he was 16. Told me straight up he didn't want to be saved. Said he just wanted to disappear." He looked over at me, his eyes sharp now. "He was scared, Haley. Not of the world. Of going back. Said if they found him, he'd rather die." I looked down. My hands were trembling again. "What did they do to him?" I asked. Crowley exhaled slowly. "He never told me all of it. Bits and pieces. Enough to know it wasn't just discipline gone too far. It was control. Isolation. Mental games. Maybe worse. Your dad especially. Liam said your mom was complicit. Passive. She didn't stop it. She didn't believe him." He sipped his coffee. "He wasn't angry, though. That's what I remember most. He was tired. Like a kid who'd been fighting alone too long." Tears were rolling down my cheeks before I even felt them. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I thought he was just gone. I thought he was dead." "He thought about contacting you," Crowley said. "More than once. But he was afraid. Said you were young. Said he didn't want to bring that darkness back into your life." I wiped my face with my sleeve. "Where is he now?" I asked. Crowley shook his head. "Last I heard he was in Arizona. Working at a wildlife refuge under a different name. He never stayed in one place too long. I get a postcard every now and then. No return address. Just a photo of a canyon or a hawk or something." He reached into a drawer and handed me a stack of them. I flipped through them slowly. A desert sunset. A hawk in flight. A mountain trail. A tiny handwritten note on the back of one. "Still breathing. Still grateful." Well, that's when it really hit me. He was out there. Alive. Free. And I'd been mourning him for almost 2 decades. "I want to find him," I said. Crowley nodded. "I figured. Can you help me?" He hesitated. "Maybe. But Haley, you have to understand. Liam's not who he was. He built a whole life away from what you both lived through. If you go looking for him, you need to do it for him. Not just for your closure." I nodded slowly. "I just want to know him again," I said. Crowley looked at me for a long time, then reached into a file cabinet and pulled out a small envelope. It had one word written on it. "For Haley." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. "Fort, if you're reading this, it means you went looking. It means you found the crumbs I left behind. I don't know how you did it, but part of me always hoped you would. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry they made it look like I died. I'm sorry you grew up thinking I was gone. But I had to go. I had to get out to survive. You were the only light in that house. The only thing I missed. If we meet again, I hope it's on a trail in the middle of nowhere. I hope you found peace too. You were never forgotten. Love, Liam." I read it 5 times. Then I sat there and cried like the little sister I never got to be. I stayed in Oregon for 3 more days. Mostly just walking. Thinking. Letting the air move through me in a way it never had before. The letter never left my side. I folded it and kept it in the inside pocket of my jacket like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I didn't try to call Liam. There was no number, no email, no social media to stalk. He didn't want to be found that way. I understood that now. His life had become a trail of breadcrumbs he only left for someone who truly wanted to understand, not just remember. So I followed the breadcrumbs the only way I could. I drove south. Through Oregon. Into Northern California. Then into Arizona, just as Crowley had said. I had no plan, no address, no certainty. Only the postcards. The vague images of cliffs and birds and long winding roads. One of them showed a sandstone rock formation near a canyon trail. I posted it on a hiker's forum, asking if anyone recognized the view. A local responded within hours. "Looks like the Copper Ridge Refuge just outside Sedona." So I went. It was beautiful. Red rocks. Clear skies. Stillness you could hear. I didn't expect to find him, not really. But I hiked anyway. I went up the trails alone, watched the hawks fly overhead. I breathed in the air like it might carry a piece of him. I watched every ranger, every trail worker, every stranger I passed just in case. But I never saw him. And strangely, I was okay with that. Because for the first time in my life, I knew he was real. He existed. He chose life. And he survived. And even if I never saw him face to face, I had something I hadn't had in nearly 20 years. Truth. I eventually went back home. Not to my parents' house, just to my own space where I started over. I cut ties with my dad. My mom and I had one conversation. Over tea on a gray afternoon. She cried. A lot. Told me she didn't know how to stop it when it started. Said she thought pretending he was dead was better than admitting they lost him. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. But I didn't hate her either. Grief and guilt are messy things. And people live inside their mess like it's a shelter. It's been a year now. I haven't heard from Liam. But every couple of months a postcard arrives. No return address. No signature. Just a snapshot of a canyon, a forest, a coastline. On the back always the same 3 words. Still breathing. Still grateful. And every time I get one I smile. Because somewhere out there my brother is alive. And even if we never have Sunday dinners or laugh about old cartoons again, he knows I remember. He knows I searched. And he knows I never stopped being his sister.